Welcome to Reiki Banashi, a podcast where we talk about Reiki in a simple way. I'm your host Innina, and I'm a practitioner and teacher of traditional Japanese Reiki. And through this space, I offer you reflections and shared experiences. And today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming Amanda Jayne. Amanda is a Daishihan teacher of Jikiden Reiki living in the UK. And I had the pleasure of meeting Amanda in 2023 at the Jikiden Reiki Institute in Kyoto. And that was when Japan had finally reopened its doors after COVID. And it was the first English language seminar that Tadao Yamaguchi had conducted since the pandemic. So it was truly a wonderful seminar because many students and teachers from all over the world were present. And I felt it was a very special moment. It was an honor because it was my first time meeting Tadao Yamaguchi, the honor of being in the house where his mother, Chiyoko Yamaguchi Sensei, also taught and gave treatments. So meeting all these beautiful souls from all around the world and also passionate about Reiki was so wonderful. And so meeting Amanda was one of the things that made it even more special, because Amanda is not just a Reiki teacher. She is a Daishihan of Jikiden Reiki, which literally means great teacher in Japanese. And this title is given to teachers with great experience and who have had the honor of receiving this recognition from our Sensei. And so she learned Reiki directly from Chiyoko Yamaguchi Sensei in Kyoto. She also had played an important role in the evolution and expansion of Jikiden Reiki outside of Japan, as she was one of the first Westerners to participate in their seminars. And so, with the help of Ikuko Hirota, she contributed to the English translation of the manuals and course materials of the Jikiden Reiki Institute, and also helped with the English translation of the book Hayashi Reiki Manual. She contributed to a small part of the book by Chiyoko Sensei's son, Tadao Yamaguchi, Light on the Origins of Reiki. And in 2016, she also edited Nishina Masaki's book, Reiki and Japan. And that is not all. Amanda is also an author. So together with Daishihan Silke Kleman, whom I also had the pleasure of meeting in Kyoto, she co-wrote the book Woman in Reiki, Lifetimes of Healing in 1930s Japan and Today. And this book is definitely in my top 3 Reiki books because it contains incredibly rich historical information and highlights the importance of women in the evolution of Reiki. In 2009, Amanda also undertook the famous Shikoku Pilgrimage in Japan, walking to 88 temples for 1,400 kilometers, another profound and enriching experience that she will share with us. So make yourself comfortable and let's get started. Konnichiwa, Amanda. Yokoso, and welcome to Reiki Banashi. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you with us today. And o genki desu ka? How are you today? So we've met in Kyoto directly at the Jikiden Reiki Institute about 2 years ago. We were mentioning before, and it was quite a special moment as it was Tadao Yamaguchi's first seminar translated in English after COVID, right? So it was just so it was amazing as we were students and teachers from kind of all over the world. And it felt a bit like friends gathering and meeting after a long time. And To me, it really felt like a celebration, right? Like meeting also for the first time Tadao Sensei for me. And so it was really beautiful to meet you in that context. And so, as I mentioned in the introduction, you have a truly fascinating and rich journey with Reiki. You're a Dai Shihan in Jikiden Reiki, and you teach mainly in the UK, right? Or also sometimes in Canada and in the US, right?
Yes. So at the moment I'm based in the UK, so I'm teaching here and I help to run the UK Chicken and Reiki Association. But I do usually once a year go to the USA, Canada, and sometimes I go to Europe if I'm invited there as well. So, but this is my base now. Yeah.
Beautiful. I hope we can have you here in Italy one day. That would be wonderful.
Up to, absolutely.
And so, so you've learned Reiki in the early years of Jikiden Reiki, actually, right? So, directly with Chiyoko Sensei, Chiyoko Yamaguchi, who learned from Hayashi Sensei. And so, this is rare and amazing, right? So, and you are also the co-author of this incredible book called Woman in Reiki. And of course, I will definitely ask you some questions about all this. But maybe before that, I'd love to go back in time. So maybe to start, could you tell us about your Reiki journey and maybe how you discovered Reiki and what drew you to this practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a long time ago now.
Mm.
I worked in mental health first here in the UK, in Cornwall, where I am now. And, my plan was to become a clinical psychologist, basically.
Mm.
And I was running a mental health helpline for the local authority. And I started to get very disillusioned just with the
Mm.
feeling of this system and this kind of just one way of doing anything. And I understand that it's also, practical in terms of the only thing that could be done at the
Yes,
time.
of
But
course.
it didn't sit right with me, this kind of, putting people through this like treadmill of things and pills and off you go. And so,
Mm.
I kind of just I could feel this yearning for, and I could feel that there was something different, that was
Mm.
another way of helping people to manage life, basically, and so it was while I was there actually that I heard about Reiki for the first time.
Oh.
Uh, and then but I kind of like left it again for a while. I heard about it, I was interested, left it, and I went traveling. I went off traveling, and whilst I was traveling around the world,
Mm.
I did it like a year kind of around. And whilst I was traveling, I looked for a teacher for Reiki then because I thought,
Oh.
um, but I just didn't find somebody who fit. And it's really
Mm.
important, isn't it, to find the teacher that is the right teacher for you. And so I just couldn't find it, and I gave up. And actually, I was on the plane home from Bolivia. Uh,
Yeah.
gosh, early 1999 or 2000 it was. And I was on the plane home from in Bolivia, and I was at a connection, and this German
Mm.
girl just came up to me, and she said to me, "Do you do Reiki?" And I was just kind of standing, in the air.
Just like
Doing
that.
my
Just.
own business. And she was like, "Do you do Reiki?" And I was, no. And she said, and then off she went. And I was like, oh, that's odd. And anyway, it just so happened, like to skip ahead a bit, it just so happened that when I got home, I just had a yearning to go somewhere else again and not stay in the UK and
Mm.
pursue the psychology again. And so Japan just popped into my head, and I was like, I'll go to Japan. And the next thing I knew, within a month, I had a job and I was sorted and I was on a plane. So, but still, it was a little while before I kind of in Japan before I encountered Reiki there.
Mm.
And I found it again through it was an English magazine and I saw it in there. And that still wasn't
Mm.
Chiyoko Sensei.
Ah, Oh, so you
No,
didn't start right with
no, that
the.
was someone else.
Okay.
But that wasn't the right teacher for me. And so when I got there and had an experience with him, I was like, nah. So I stopped again. But it was thanks to that I found Chiyoko Sensei. Um, I write more detail about it in the book, and I'm happy to talk a bit more, but I don't want to go on too long about it. It was
Of
it was
course.
it was fascinating. It was just this series of pushes toward
Mm.
what life was giving me, you know. So
Almost like Reiki was trying to find you.
it kind of feels a bit that way. And also, I tried so hard to find it, and
Mm.
just wasn't right. It was never right. And it was only when I gave up, and it was right at the end of traveling, that I was just like, do you know what? Forget it. I'm and I kind of stopped. And that was when I guess I'd let go enough that life could kind of push me in the right direction,
Mm.
which was Japan, right? And it just so
Beautiful.
happened that I lived only 10 minutes from Chiyoko Sensei.
No,
That
really.
was where I'd been posted to teach, and it was like 10 minutes from her. And so when I found her through Ikuko, who works at the institute now, um, yeah, it was very easy then to go and learn, regularly, which is what I did. I wanted to really immerse myself as much as possible, so I went very regularly to join things. So it was cool.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's almost like the universe was were putting the pieces together to make you learn from her. I didn't know that you were living so close, like 10
Yeah,
minutes. This is incredible.
ride my bike up there or get the bus. But yeah, it was incredible, and it was really just fascinating how, after all, I'd had so much of this isn't right, this isn't right, this,
Mm,
and it was just fascinating because the second I walked into her apartment, before
mm,
I even met her, there was like a long corridor and then the kitchen at
mm.
the end. She was in the kitchen and just sitting in front of the fridge. And and I just walked, as I walked into the apartment, I could feel it. And I was like, this is the right place. And then I got
Oh.
in and looked around, and there she was, just smiling, this little old lady, anybody's ordinary grandma, just emanating love and just warmth, and also a kind of little bit of a mischievous smile, She was just, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is it.
Mm.
It was amazing.
So that felt right away.
I knew that was what I'd been looking for, was this teacher here. And
Mm,
her son, Taro Sensei, who was working with her and continues now, obviously, to be
mm,
the head of the institute now, and he said that they were just looking for somebody who lived locally and spoke English to help them with, start to do books and textbooks and English seminars and stuff. And so it was this perfect meeting at the time. Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, so you had kind of a key role in that moment, right? Because they were looking for someone who would translate their material for teaching, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there was lots of us involved in that. It wasn't like,
Mm.
just me or anything. There was lots of us involved, and Ikuko, my friend, was the one also helping. The two of us kind of did a lot of work
Mm.
together. But it was, I actually really am so fond of those days and the memories of them,
Mm.
because there were just a few of us. It was before it got big. It was literally
Yeah.
starting. And so it was this real beautiful little family, and we used to have so much fun, just like,
Oh.
doing everything together, doing the books and the textbooks and traveling, and it was just lovely. I loved it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, and so I can imagine, yeah, in the starting days to learn Reiki from Chiyoko Sensei, how was it like? Like what stood out to you the most about her teaching and her presence, as you said, like the ordinary a bit grandma, but with such presence, right?
Yeah. I think so in the seminars in those
Mm.
days, so we call it she was teaching, but she, in the talking parts, right, where
Mhm.
you're, when you, the main body of the curriculum where you're teaching. So what would happen was Tadao Sensei would be standing up talking, and she would be sitting next to him. And then, so she was kind of training him to do it, right? So he'd
Mm.
be up talking, and then she would interject. And she was very strict, actually. If he got anything just slightly off, she would be like, "No, it's like this." And
Mm.
so they were kind of doing that together. And then whenever we did practice and stuff like this, what I remember particularly is her just coming around and she was just very gentle and loving in her
Mm.
reassurance. And I would say that was what it was. There was this total trust that everybody could do it. And there was this
Mm.
reassurance, which was what I needed actually at the time, because, when I started to learn Reiki, I couldn't feel the Byosen very well at all. And so I really
Oh.
was one of those people who was like, I don't know if this works.
Okay, can we just explain what is bios and very very simply for people who maybe don't know what it is?
Yeah. So the Byosin is, Chiyoko Sensei taught it as she had been taught, as like one of the really very important aspect of treatment. And so what it is it's referring to the sensation that you get in your hands. And that sensation is telling you what's going on in the body. So it will tell you if there's just a small blockage, a little
Mm.
few toxins, right the way up to there's something very big going on in this area, a big block
Right.
or a load of toxins. So, you get these different sensations in your hands, and they begin for many people very subtly when you
Hmm.
start. But the more that you practice, it becomes clearer and clearer, almost like tuning into a clearer radio station kind of thing.
Right.
Suddenly it becomes really obvious, and
Mm.
second nature. But it took me a long time
Mm.
to feel that. And she was so reassuring. I don't know if I'd have carried on if I hadn't have lived where I lived and been able to go regularly and have her continually calmly saying, "Don't worry, you'll feel it," and just
Mm.
keep encouraging me. Yeah.
Mm.
So that was lovely. And her Reiju was just always beautiful. I mean, Reiju
Mm.
feels magical anyway. We probably
Mm.
need to explain Reiju, do we? Or
Yes, exactly. Very shortly.
so Reiju is the kind of it's a sacred ceremony, Japanese ceremony, really. And this is a ceremony that helps to unblock, if you like,
Mm.
blockages that we have, that prevent really strong Reiki flowing through us.
Mm.
And Reiki will flow through everybody anyway. There's not like a new energy to attune to or anything.
Exactly.
It's already all there, but
Mm.
over lifetimes and lifetimes we get these things blocking, and fears, worries, whatever, like lots of different things. And so
Mm.
these the Reiki clears that, or helps to begin to clear it and clear it and clear it. And it's a beautiful ceremony. It's just beautiful, the
Mm.
feeling of it, as you will know, right? So,
Absolutely.
and doing it with her, especially that first time when I didn't know what was going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful, really beautiful.
Mm.
And there's just a feeling of magic almost in the air, like an
Mm.
anticipation. And yeah, it was really lovely. And um yeah, I just think those seminars, when I think back to all those seminars in those days, they all felt just supremely magical. And I knew there was something special that I was part of and wonderful. But at the
Mm.
same time, as I've said, it was very ordinary, and we all messed around in the breaks and laughed and played
Mm.
around, and it was
Yeah.
just, yeah. And that's something I very much like, and like to try and continue with, so that
Mm.
she didn't take herself too seriously, or she
There
didn't
you go.
races, right? She didn't consider herself some spiritual master or anything. She
Mm.
just was somebody doing this thing that everybody can do. She's doing it a long time, and therefore, could do it very well, and
Mm.
had this wonderful love flowing through her.
And I guess very humble because I mean, she learned from Hayashi Sensei directly, right? Like she could have built something around that, and instead, you seem to say she was very much natural and herself, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things that I really noticed and admired.
Mm,
Yeah. And
mm,
here's the thing, right? She'd been doing it when I met her for what, more than 60 years when I met
mm, mm,
her. She still had this childlike wonder when she talked about Reiki and when she did treatments. And, when she did a treatment and then someone came back the next week, I would go sometimes to help.
mm.
And so she would be so excited to see what was the difference, like what's happening, you know?
Wow, yeah.
Loved it. She loved to see how people could, recover and open up and,
Mm,
become more because of these Reiki treatments, more themselves, because of these Reiki treatments. And it was so
mm,
lovely to see this wonder and humility in this old lady who had done so much, for
mm.
people.
Have you ever experienced treatment with her yourself?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. I actually, they really did recommend, as they did, I believe, in Usui and Hayashi's day, that, when you are going to learn Reiki, it's a good idea to also receive treatments so you know what
Yes.
they like and what happens. And for Chiyoko Sensei, most of her students, I think, came from people she was giving treatments to. Um,
Mm,
so for me, I started to get treatments for my stomach. I had a problem in my stomach because I'd had typhoid when I was in
mm,
Bolivia,
mm.
and it had really messed up my intestines.
Oh, yeah, I guess that might
Yeah,
be.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I was in constant pain, and it was very difficult. Like even like after I ate, there was so much pain.
Mm,
One of the doctors said it can like restrict and squeeze your intestines.
mm,
Make them smaller so it's harder. So yeah, so I received treatments from her, and that was a really good experience too, because
mm,
I got to see how, again, just how ordinary it was. There was no
yeah.
show. She literally just sat and did it and almost fell asleep, like, while she was doing it. It was just, and sometimes she said a few words, sometimes she was like kind of nodding off, but it's kind of cool because she had her hand flat on my stomach very often. And I remember once or twice, like feeling like thinking she must be like I had visions of her standing on the chair, like pushing her thumb into my stomach so hard because
Oh,
the feeling was of that, like jamming something in. And I was like, oh my God. And I opened my eyes and she's just like that.
all
Just sitting
right. So she was not even pushing her hands, nothing. Just like that. Wow.
there. It was really cool.
Wow.
It
Beautiful.
was nice. It was a good experience. And, again, it also regarding treatments, it helped me to, you know, be and feel that there was nothing, no big special ceremony.
There
I
you
had
go.
to, and it's nice, of course, to have a wonderful healing space. Of course, it feels lovely, doesn't it?
Mm,
She did them in her front room, or,
mm.
you don't need these special things. She didn't have candles. She didn't have music. You just did it.
Yeah.
And
The hands and
it works. That's the
yes.
thing, right? Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so I guess you already mentioned through her presence and her simplicity, but is there a lesson from Chiyoko Sensei that continues to guide you in your practice and teaching today?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there are many, right? I think the lessons uh, are those bigger things. I think I talk about them in the book a little as well, like,
Yeah.
the sense of wonder, the
Mm,
humility, the simplicity, right? And it all, like, those are the things. And I think one of the biggest things that I try and pass on to my students as well is like Reiki is part of everyday life. It's a something to become part of your life. It's not like this extra thing that you can
yeah.
do or that makes you a bigger, better person, or, any of that. It's just part of all of our lives. And, we get to use it every day. So you get to put your hand on, when your child has falls down, you get to use it and put your hand on it. Or, now my mum's not very well. And so,
Mm,
I get to use it in our everyday life to help her.
right.
And that's what it's about. I use it every day on myself. I
Mm.
cannot imagine life without it, as
Mm.
many other people will say. Uh, but you don't have to make it into this, like,
Yeah,
this kind of, I don't know what it is, but it feels slightly, I don't know, it doesn't feel like the way Usui and Hayashi uh,
right.
would see it. This kind of a bit more of a drama or present, this kind of,
Mm.
I can't think of the right words because I'm in menopause, probably.
No, no.
Yeah, no, we're forgetting some words over here. But,
No,
but
yeah, I guess it's this separation through like it's almost like the practice would be something separated from your daily life, and instead it's something that is inside. Yeah,
and it's not something that makes you special or spiritual. It's
right.
something that is already part of you,
Yeah.
It just makes us all us, you know, spiritual beings, whether we are aware of it or not. So,
Mm.
it's just a wonderful thing. So I would say that, and just that sense of community as well. I really
Mm.
loved, uh, witnessing this, everybody coming together
Yeah.
when someone was really sick, and that was lovely. And so I tried to get my students and little communities to do that for each
Mm.
other as well.
The
Yeah.
care, the caring of each other, right?
It feels like actually the basis of what it is to be human. That's who, you know, and I know we're very far from that right now, in on a global scale, but I
Yeah,
actually, on local scales, we're not. We're actually finding more and more people just
true.
human, and bring
Mm.
humanity back. And that's what's needed. And I think the global um, disarray and disconnection will actually just further and foster that local connection, because it will be needed. And that's a good thing that it's going to be,
Right.
that we're doing that. Yeah. So,
Beautiful. And well, we covered a bit that maybe as well, but is there a moment in your life when you felt that Reiki profoundly transformed you, or on a personal or spiritual level, as you mentioned?
it's so funny because I don't think it's about a moment, but
Yes.
it has profoundly transformed me. But it
Mm,
is a series of moments, or a
right.
gradual kind of movement, I think. And like I said, because Reiki's in everything that you're doing and in your everyday life, and part of me now, I, it's just been a series of things happening. I mean, it wasn't very long after that I decided to become vegetarian. Now, that doesn't mean
Mm.
everybody should be vegetarian. I'm not saying, but, but what happens is, because I think, when you have the Reiki coming through you and you're using it, you're coming into a greater meditative state more often. It encourages you, I think, to do that.
Mm,
And also the idea is that your tamashi, right, which is
mm,
the Japanese way of understanding, like, your soul, your individual soul that's branched from the source, a little branch of the big energy, is, you have more of the energy running through, and it does tend to wake you up a little bit in different ways,
mm.
right? And so some people maybe have a profound experience, and lots of people, I say majority, have lots of little things. And I
Right.
just one day was like, no, like, I don't want to do that anymore, and I became
Mm,
vegetarian. I started to listen to my body more. So
mm,
I have a much better, clearer relationship with my body, what it wants to eat, what when it wants to exercise, what it needs, what it's telling me as well, you know, and I often have conversations with it in terms of what pain or problems are telling me, you know, and you can get profound insight from that too. And trust, I would say, is a big one. I have learnt to trust life a lot more, and I think that Reiki is a very big part of that.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, as you say, I guess Reiki is so natural somehow that it cannot be like a highlighting moment. Everything grows in nature with its time, right? So there is this kind of natural, mm, how can I say, filtering of things maybe also happening, right? Like most of the time. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe things will naturally go away from your routine, as you said, for food, for example, or maybe some people that you will meet, or you don't resonate anymore with something that is truly your nature.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the more that happens, it's if it happens gradually, I think then it can last. Very
Exactly.
often, if you have one huge thing, it's very
Yes.
difficult to maintain it because the rest of you has to catch up.
That's true.
The beauty of Reiki is the changes are organic. They're organic and they're
Mm,
in tune with your system and what you can manage so that you see. I see, you know, in people I've taught Reiki to as well, you know, this movement, and it will happen
mm,
faster or slower, differently, this way or that way, depending who it is, right? Because we're not all the same and we're not meant to be, you know, it's
mm.
yeah.
Exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I would love to go slowly on the direction of your book, Woman in
Ah,
Reiki, but but before that, as a woman and a teacher, have you encountered any particular challenges in passing on Reiki?
do you mean because I'm a woman? Like, is there something related to being a woman? Is that,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, not hugely. I mean, there's a bit about why we wrote the book, which I think kind of speaks to this a little, but
Mm,
I would say, you know, I haven't kind of encountered, you know, anyone saying don't, you can't, that kind of thing. I
exactly. Okay.
had more in the early days, I had
Uh-huh.
students who were more difficult to manage, male students, and but just a few, honestly. One of them,
Mm.
for example, he kept trying. He actually hadn't done Reiki before, but he kept trying to teach the class instead of me. So he kept and telling them his opinion about stuff, as if it was fact, you know.
Wow,
And
okay.
sometimes it was very inaccurate regarding Reiki. And one morning I remember he came in with a book about Reiki, which was nothing to do actually with the Reiki that we were doing and didn't actually like align with it.
Yeah.
He came in and said, "Well, this morning, before I started, everyone's saying, this morning I'm going to read this," he said. And started to read from this book that wasn't accurate.
Oh,
So,
wow.
you know, I've had that then, but the thing is, like, I think woman or not, it doesn't matter. Any
Yeah.
challenging students or
Mm,
challenges, they're really for me, right? They're about
mm.
how do I respond to this? Who am I in relationship to this? Who do I want to
Yeah,
be? So,
exactly.
you know, I that guy, funnily enough, came twice. He came to another
So he
second.
really enjoyed trying to teach in your class.
But the point was, I hadn't learned what I needed to learn because I hadn't been able to, with kindness and compassion, stop him doing what he was doing and make sure that there was a boundary. And and so the second time I did learn that, I did do it, and I didn't get someone like that again afterwards. Um,
Mm,
and so, you know, I often find that, you know, if there's a problem and a difficulty, and I help the people who I've taught to teach with that too, you know, it's about,
right.
and, you know, if you can learn how to deal with it, it won't happen anymore. Or if it
Yeah.
does, stuff passes you by really easily anyway because you've learned how to manage it. So everything
Exactly.
right.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I guess as you say, the challenges can come in different forms, and maybe can be women or men that are challenging. Of course, that doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can talk a bit about your book, your amazing book. So you're also an author, and you've written several books, right?
Yeah, I've written a few different ones. A couple of them are not in print right now, but I hope to bring them out
Mm.
again. But Women in Reiki is going strong, so that's lovely, really lovely.
Yes, that's so you co-wrote this fascinating book with Silke Kleeman. So it was published in 2 years ago, like
It was,
2023, right?
I think it was 2021,
Two, maybe.
maybe.
Oh, okay, okay. Maybe I have
But
the latest version, so
no.
probably I checked.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could talk about this book for hours and ask you so many questions about it, and we would probably need a whole episode to just talk about it. Because it's really truly an amazing book that highlights the important role that women have played in the evolution and history of Reiki. And what's very, very interesting is that while most people are familiar with the Hawayo Takata story, right? Who made Reiki known in the West, let's say, that you also talk about, of course, in the book. But you also explore the lives of other key women, such as Chie Hayashi, the wife of Hayashi Sensei, or Kimiko Koyama, the first female president of Usui Reiki Ryoho Gakkai, and of course Chiyoko Yamaguchi. So, at what point did you come up with the idea for women in Reiki, and what or was there a specific event or inspiration that led you to write it?
Wow, this is Zilka, basically. Zilka was the
Mm,
inspiration. And so she was meditating one day and she had this inspiration for initially the thought was this like when she came to me, she had this inspiration to write this book, Woman in Reiki. And she came to me with it. She was like, let's, do you want to do this together? And
wow.
so I was immediately in. I was really, but what she originally came up with was, it's fascinating that, Reiki is all over the world these days. And actually, the majority of practitioners are women. But when
Mm,
you look at the majority of teachers who are in the public eye, who are writing books, who have the biggest schools, they're all men.
right.
So they tend to get the most attention with it. And she
Mm,
wanted to write it not as a we need attention too, not like that, but just to give women a voice in.
right.
And so originally she was like, let's just take women who are in teaching positions across the world and give them a voice. Let's interview them, see what they have to say. So that was the beginning. But then when we talked about it, when we sat with it, we were like, well, you can't just suddenly have the women of today without those women on who we're standing on these women, on the shoulders of these
Mm,
women who came before us, right? And so, like anything, you can't ignore what came before because that is what you're standing on. And so
mm,
so very quickly we became aware that and excited about writing and finding out more about the stories of these Japanese women who, carried it really through the war safely at a time
mm,
it could have really died out, um, and used it daily,
mm.
and so we decided to look more deeply at their stories and write about them as well as
Mm,
writing about women teachers today. Um,
right.
and then actually, I really just wanted, really for myself as well, to explore the history of women in Japan and how that kind of went. So we did that as an appendix, but actually,
Right.
I think that's for me that was fascinating to learn a little bit about that as well. So it
Yes.
came about, and then it was years, took us 3 years to write it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it's a very interesting book also because you can it's almost three or four books in one. Like you don't need to have to follow the whole book, and you can like pick up one part, maybe the more historical part, and just dive in and really like go into details because you went really deep in the research with photographies and so many valuable information that I guess are not so much known in the general, let's say, in the Reiki community, right?
Yeah, yeah. And we did that on purpose. We made it a book you could, because it's quite a large book, right?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Large book. But we made it so that you can dip in and out. You can
Yeah.
read one person's story and then
Mm,
put it down and then dip somewhere else into the book to someone else's story, modern or older, um and I think, that's what life is about, stories, right? That's what humanity is
mm,
about, stories. So it's for me, it's lovely to be able to tell these, to get some historical facts across through story, and so I hope that's what we managed to do there.
absolutely. Really, I use it so often. Actually, oh, I have it in the next room, but I have so many bookmarks on it, and
Oh, do you?
that's the sign. That's the sign that I always go back to a book. It's when it's on the shelf and you see those little marks. And I also use it sometimes as a complement to the teaching. Like there are so many beautiful photos also of Chiyoko Sensei or all these women that we don't really hear about. And that's
Right? And
so,
they were really influential, weren't they? And key.
yes, yes, and so important to the development of Reiki today. Like if they weren't there, I
Yeah, we
guess.
should be here too.
Yeah, truly, truly fascinating. And so your book is in English, right? So are you planning to translate it at some point?
Well, we are. I mean, the first translation will be German, which of course, is up to Zilka. I can't help her with
Yeah.
that. Therefore, it's going to take longer. But that is a plan.
Mm,
Um, we wanted to make it into Japanese too at some point.
absolutely
At the
beautiful.
moment, we've had to let that go for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we're open to doing it. It's expense and
Of course.
finding the right people, right? Because
Mm,
of course you want it to be translated in a way that's true to the feeling and
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
sense of it. So um,
Yeah.
I hope so. Nothing just yet. Yeah.
I guess that's I'm asking you because I guess our Italian and French listeners are probably trying to to
Yeah.
know if it's going to be something that they can read too one day. I hope so.
Yeah. Sorry, it's not right now.
Not yet.
That's right.
Let's hope one day. All right. So yeah, I could go for hours talking about your book. So I guess maybe if you want to come back, we could maybe like talk even more about it.
Yeah, because I'm so passionate about these women and what they
Mm,
did, and just, I mean, I already knew of the women and thought that that was great, but the writing it and researching it, it just gave me
mm,
so much appreciation for who they were and what they did and the challenges that they encountered and
mm.
kept going through were phenomenal. So I would love to come and talk more about them.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And maybe not only about women in Reiki, but as you said, in history of Japan, there is this bravery about women that is incredible, right?
And you
Yeah,
see it everywhere, of course, but it was yeah, it was really fascinating. There were some key little stories that really stay with me that women were doing back in the 13th, 14th century in Japan, under very tricky circumstances.
exactly.
So yeah, absolutely, I would love to talk about that.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we will keep it maybe for another time, but as we're slowly coming to the end of it goes so fast, right? At the end of the episode, but no, I have a few questions still for you. So I'd like to go on another topic, as this is also another fascinating thing that you did. So you completed, it's not just you did, you completed the Shikoku Pilgrimage in Japan. So walking about, I think, 1,400 kilometers.
Well, the actual pilgrimage is 1,200.
Right, and then there is Koya-san. Yeah, right.
I walked more, yeah, because I kept going back.
Oh!
Probably was about that much.
Oh, and so it's yeah, maybe we can explain a little bit what it is. Like it's 88 temples on this island, right, of Shikoku.
Yeah, so Shikoku is one of the islands at the bottom of Honshu, the main island of Japan, and it's a small island. And what there are there is it's the only circular pilgrimage in the world, actually.
Right.
And the tradition is to follow this route of these 88 temples, and it goes right the way around the edge of the island. And then when you get to Temple 88, you walk back to Temple 1 so that you complete the circle, basically. Um, and there's a
Oh.
guy called Kobodaishi who's credited with being the first guy to do it, the first to do it. But I'm sure there's lots of different historical things that
Stories. Hmm.
that. But yeah, it's a pilgrimage well known in Japan, not so well known outside of Japan,
Hmm.
but a lot of people do it. Traditionally, it was of course done walking, but a lot of people now do it by car,
Right.
and they
So,
don't have so much time now. Everyone's busy working, so
so you
people
did everything by walk, right? Like you did
yes,
everything. That's an incredible journey. How long did it take you to do the full
49 days.
49 days?
That's the
Wow.
that is with on the 49th day, you go back to Koyasan, which
Right.
is where Kobodaishi is enshrined, and so you go and climb that mountain and visit his grave to say
Right.
thank you for his
Hmm.
help, because he walks uh,
Hmm.
with you in the form of a walking stick. I've got it here actually. Do you want to see?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I still
Wonderful.
keep it in my room. You probably can't see it.
Beautiful. Oh, yes, yes, of course we can see it.
And on here is the Heart Sutra, and
Oh,
have this on the top, and yeah, this is what you take. This is what I walked with around
beautiful. Oh,
the.
for our listeners that are just like Amanda just like showed us this wonderful walking stick, wooden, with this beautiful, how do you call it, cloth on top of it to
Cockade, I think
protect.
it's called. And underneath that, you've got these Buddhist. Uh, it's Sanskrit actually there, but it's this idea of earth and I'm going to get it wrong now, but earth, water, fire,
Yeah,
air,
elements and yeah, that's
and
beautiful.
so it was really funny actually because I was walking with the stick because you buy it at the beginning,
Yes.
walking solo around it, and so there I was with this stick, and I saw these brocade things,
Yes.
up, and I was like, I don't need one of them, and so I just carried on without it. And I was quite far. I think I was about two-thirds or three-quarters of the way around.
Mm.
And I met this old man who was he called himself a professional henro, which means he walked.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
He actually had an oxygen tank. He was doing it by car now because he'd gotten sick. But he was horrified that I didn't have this book. And it turned out that you're supposed to have this on, and then
Oh,
when you die on the pilgrimage, which was what used to happen to people, then they take it off, and this is your grave.
oh
Like walking around with my grave marker, unbeknownst to me, of course.
no. Oh, so I guess that's quite an intense journey, right? Like so, I mean everything by foot like that. Did Reiki support you in any way during this adventure, if I can ask you?
That's right. How could it not? Yes, it
Mm.
did very much in many different ways. It was honestly the first part of it was almost hell, I would say. It was, I was in so much pain. I was so miserable. And
Mm.
I kind of naively, I would say, set myself up to do it. So, I just, which is often how I make myself do things. If you look too much at what it is, you probably won't do it. I wouldn't. So anyway, and there's this circular pilgrimage has four sections. The
Mm.
first section is called the spiritual awakening. It's the
Oh,
section for spiritual awakening. And for me, that section, I was in pain and misery. Like
interesting.
I didn't like walking. I had a problem with my feet and my legs that I didn't know existed. My feet
Oh.
were in so much pain. And so
Mm.
every night, of course, I had to give myself Reiki just to be
Mm.
able to do the next day. Um, and that second part there was aesthetic training. It's known as the
Mm.
place of aesthetic training, which for me there was a lot of fear, but a lot of determination starting to rise.
Mm.
You know? The third one was enlightenment, the place of enlightenment, which for me was like stepping into the unknown. And then the last one was nirvana,
Wow, okay.
which right at the end of that, I wouldn't say for all of it, but right at the end of it, I came into this place of peace and trust.
Mm.
Yeah. So going around those, Reiki was a part of all of it, but especially those first two, even going into the third sections.
Mm.
There were many times where I didn't know if I was going to be able to carry on. And I remember
Mm.
one particular day where it was so bad, I was crying in pain all day while I was
Oh.
walking. I think I did
Oh.
5 kilometers that day. And I was in so much pain, I couldn't even find. I remember this Japanese family found me crying outside there.
Oh.
I was kind of standing there because I couldn't find the place I was going to stay. I just couldn't find it, and I couldn't take another step. And this family was so sweet to me, trying to help me find the place. And they did help me find. I did find it.
Oh.
But that night when I collapsed down onto the tatami, I was just like, I'm not. I can't go on. I cannot.
Mm.
And I had, like, on purpose, I had no iPod, which is what it would have been then. I had
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah.
headphones. I had no music because I did that on purpose because it's a pilgrimage, so you're supposed to
Yeah.
stuff come up, and so I didn't want to distract myself with music,
Mm.
podcasts or whatever. So it was just me and my terrible thoughts at the time, right? I was only in the first or second section, and I had a phone that was for emergencies, but I text my friend Uma on this phone and said, I'm giving up tomorrow morning
Mm.
if my feet are in this much pain.
Oh.
Um, and she was like, I'm on it, right? And so what she did was she got a group of people, she sent out messages to a group of people saying, you need to give Amanda Reiki on her feet.
Oh.
She really needs it. And I woke up that next morning and I didn't have pain in my feet. And
This
so
is
I was like,
incredible.
yeah. Yeah. Of
Beautiful.
course, the pain came back, but it made me go on that day. It
Mm.
didn't come back. I don't know if it came back quite as intense. But because I never got to that place again where I was like, I'm not going on.
Mm.
Yeah. But it
Mm.
helped me every day. Yeah.
Beautiful. So it's a full journey that yeah, you also go through so many phases, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it
Mm.
was fascinating to me that what was happening in each section fit with what that section, I mean, of course, right? But I thought it was just like this wonderful Buddhist thing that they've kind of named to them,
Yeah.
but it's a real part of the journey, it was the pain and the misery, the suffering that causes you to go into aesthetic training, that causes you to go further. And obviously I didn't become enlightened, but it's this idea that, and the represent what that represented
Mm.
manifest like fully. And I had all sorts, as you can imagine, of incredible experiences that happened, and they
Mm.
fit again. I think it was in the aesthetic training part of it that I several times I came to a place where I was so stuck and I needed help so
Mm.
badly, but there was nothing and no one. I remember once where I ended up, so in Japan and especially in Shikoku, I think it's changing
Mm.
now, but you can't really use credit cards or cards. They use,
Right. Yeah, it's cash mainly, right? Yeah.
and the money that I did have, I had, on a card because I didn't want to carry huge amounts of cash for, a month and a half, 2 months. So I'd run out basically of
Mm.
cash. And I thought where I landed that evening, I thought there was going to be somewhere to get cash, and there wasn't. There was nowhere. In fact, there were
Oh.
four main places on the island where you could get it, which I didn't realize. And so I landed. I was so tired. I just climbed up and over a mountain. I thought there was going to be a load of shops, and there was one restaurant
Mm.
um, in this place, and there was nowhere for me to stay. And I slept outside a lot of the time anywhere, but there
Mm.
wasn't really anywhere for me to stay. And it was so cold and windy, I was going to have to sleep in the doorway of this restaurant. So I had to
Oh.
wait for it to close. But of course, I couldn't go in because I didn't have any money. So I was starving and I was so cold and tired. And so I went into this restaurant and I said to them, can I just sit? Just sit. That's it. I'm just cold. And so they let me sit, bless them. And they brought me some hot tea, which felt to me like the most amazing thing in the world, that I had
Mm.
this hot green tea. Um, and as I was sitting there, the restaurant filled up. And then the next thing I know, this family come over to me and they say, come, 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 come. And they sit me down and they give me their food, basically. So I get
Oh.
an amazing dinner of food. It was just phenomenal. Like that happened
Beautiful.
a lot. Whatever I needed, suddenly turned up. Somebody would appear from nowhere and offer me what I needed.
Mm.
That was interesting. Yeah. And yeah. I was charged by a wild boar. I
Oh, really?
Yeah, I almost died in a tunnel. I in fact should have died in the tunnel.
Did you have the cover of your stick when it happened?
Do you know what? I actually don't know. Yeah, I'd have to look at my notes to see. I wrote a book about it. I've got to rewrite it. I haven't published it.
Oh, that would be
Oh,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I will bring out a book about it. So yeah, I'm not sure, but that's funny, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that was something. And just that, moving into that last section, I remember, I don't know, three-quarters of the way around, I met this old man, right?
Mm.
And he had been walking the pilgrimage for 7 years. He just went around and around and around. He didn't live anywhere, he just walked the
Oh,
pilgrimage.
wow. Okay.
And I met this, he was old, but
Mm.
he he was so happy, I would say. The feeling of him
Mm.
was very peaceful and happy and contented. And he wanted to keep walking until he died. That was his purpose, was to keep walking until he died and be buried at the side, which was what they did with the henro, and put the
Mm.
stick, of course, by and I remember when I met him, so it must have been earlier in the journey, halfway, maybe when I met him, I could not imagine doing that because I'm
Mm.
still in this place of like, I've just got to get round this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wanted it to finish. And I could not believe that somebody could do that. And yet, when I got to the end of the pilgrimage, it was only the last few days that I went
Mm.
into this place. It was a place where I have never experienced anything like it. my knees hurt, my feet hurt still. They hadn't stopped. My knees were
Mm.
collapsing. I had them like they were taped with duct tape. I would,
Oh.
you know, the big duct tape. Every day I would tape up my knees and my ankles because if I didn't, they would collapse.
Ah.
And so they were all taped up. They were painful. And I was in the most joyous place ever experienced. Everything was phenomenal. It was like I was seeing things in a way I'd never seen them before. The sunshine coming through the leaves in the trees was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. You know,
Mm.
everything was joyous. I felt light and
Mm.
just incredible. And of course, that's the purpose of the pilgrimage, you know, is that
Beautiful.
get to that place. And so when I
Yeah,
finished back at number one, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep going, just like that guy. The
that's
thought of going back
incredible.
to society was awful. Yeah.
Mm.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How that can happen.
It's incredible. Yeah.
It really is. It was so simple. Get up, eat, eat, walk, eat, go to sleep. That was
Mm.
it. And it was the most joyous, fulfilling, amazing way of being, you know. So
Wow.
incredible journey.
Beautiful. And so so you finished after 49 days. That's a long time, right?
Yeah. It, yeah, and so much had happened. It felt like even longer, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you finished also the journey to Koyasan. So there's a last part, right? That you have to.
Yeah. So I actually finished that in 48 and then on the
Mhm.
49. So what I did was then I took the train back
Mm.
Osaka to my friend's house in Osaka. And then the following day, I got up and I took the train to Koyasan. And Koyasan, most people you can drive up or get the bus, but you have to walk as part of the.
Mm.
And so I walked up this mountain, Koyasan, to the thing. And of course, I didn't have a backpack. I had a backpack all the way around the
Mm.
a heavy backpack all the way around the. But that day, of course, because I was going to do it in a day, I didn't need the
To
backpack.
take everything with you.
Felt phenomenally light. I literally felt like I floated up that mountain. I was, of course, fit by then as well, right? And
Mm.
I lost a lot of weight just from walking, you know.
Of
And
course.
and so I literally just floated up the mountain. Like, and I did it in 5 hours, which when I got to the top, the monk I spoke to at the top was like, no, 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 you must be mistaken. It's not 5 hours, you know, it's longer. But I think that was just because of the place I was in, because I just,
Mm.
and it was just magical to go to, you know, the uh through the cemetery, you know,
Yeah.
it's a big, beautiful cedar cemetery. It's a phenomenal place to go.
Mm.
And yeah, and Kobayashi grave is at the back. So you go and you say thank you and do the Heart Sutra there, which is what you do at each temple, right? You say the Heart Sutra. Um, and I remember just crying in gratitude, you know, tears running
Mm.
down my face as I was saying the Heart Sutra. It was the
Mm.
most beautiful experience. It really was. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. Really.
I know. It's exciting. It's lovely to think about. I did it a long time ago now, right? 2009. I did it.
Mm.
Um, but you know, the feeling of it is still very present with me.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny that you talk about it now because I'm just moving into rewriting the book and uh
We can't wait. I can't wait to read it. Like, really.
that's good. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to go back into it and
Mm.
go on the journey again.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you. So inspiring. I know that I never had the courage to do it for that reason that it's so long, right? But yeah, I always wanted to. And it's just I know a lot of people do it by parts. They don't do it the full pilgrimage, but yeah, 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 beautiful. Beautiful. I could also another topic that we could talk for hours, right? Like that's the that's the thing with you.
There's a lot of stories from that pilgrimage as well, right?
Mm.
Which would yeah, were juicy and yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I was carrying other people's prayers as well. That was
Oh.
yeah. And so I was carrying these prayers, one, for each person they'd chosen the temple beforehand.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that was a wonderful part of it as well, to be doing that. And I think that helped me continue as well, right?
Mm.
Get around to everybody. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So yeah, I would really talk about about just that pilgrimage for hours, but as I said, like we're one episode cannot be 4 hours. So yeah, we're slowly coming to the end of this episode, but I still have one question that I ask all the guests of Reiki Banashi. And that question is, if you could meet Mikao Usui Sensei today, what would you ask him and what would you tell him?
It's a good question. It feels like a very big question. I think
It
there's a lot
is.
of things, I could respond in many ways, but the biggest thing I think is gratitude. So
Mhm.
in terms of telling him, it would be huge gratitude, thank
Mm.
you. Because it's changed my life, but I know it's changed many lives, right? I mean, yeah, and I love that, he wasn't actually looking for a healing modality to pass on to people. It happened upon him, and I think, to me, that's strikes of something very true and very
Mm.
devoid of ego, right? That it just happened, and so he followed. Which, funny enough, that is another thing Reiki's taught me, is to follow life rather than
Yeah.
trying to lead where my mind thinks it should go. And um, so I would say thank you for that, and on behalf of all the people in my life who've benefited from it. Um, in terms of a question, it's odd because I can imagine, and I know that there are many wonderful Reiki questions that you could ask,
Mm.
but honestly, I have this curiosity, and it's not. I hope it doesn't come across as a criticism in any way, because
Of course.
but it is a genuine question, and it kind of coincides with some of the things that, from the appendix we were talking about, the history of women in Japan, because you know Usui Sensei became enlightened and began to teach. Now, you can see in the old pictures, he did teach women and men.
Right.
His teachers were men, because in Japan, that's how it was, right? All the
Mm.
teachers were men. And it was only in Hayashi Sensei's time it started to change, right?
Yeah.
As Japanese culture began to change. So I started to think about this when I was researching for the history of Japan, and
Mm.
looked at Buddhism, and
Mm.
found out some things that I hadn't realized about Buddhism, which was that Buddhism held that, in former days, when it began, it held that women were below men, and that, women were considered inherently evil, and therefore couldn't ever achieve enlightenment in the way a man.
Oh.
They would have to be reincarnated as a man in order to achieve enlightenment. So, this is said to have come from the original Buddha. I don't know if it did or not.
Mm.
And, I was very shocked by
Mm.
this, right? Things like, honestly, that there's like these kind of original edicts which
Yeah.
literally say that, a monk who has been a monk for a day is higher than a nun who's been a nun for like 30 years. This kind of
Right. Yeah.
and way of thinking. Well, we understand, of course, that these were different
Mm.
times.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what I'm so curious is
Yeah.
about, both with the Buddha and with Usui Sensei, is, if you become enlightened as they
Mm.
did, you must be in a place where you see past gender. You must be in a
Yeah.
place where you're seeing the souls, the spirits, the beings that we are. And
Mm.
therefore, there's no difference, right, in terms
Right.
of beings.
Mm.
The ability of these beings to achieve enlightenment is, you know, so I'm curious about that. Like, did
Mm.
both the Buddha and Usui Sensei know that, but have to adhere to cultural norms? So
Oh.
at work, they adhered to cultural norms, knowing that it would gradually change and trusting that this would.
Mm.
Or did they not? Like, were they such, in which case, I just, do you understand what I mean? It's
Of
just
course. Yeah, that's
like, what did they think about that? What did Usui Sensei think about the fact, or did he think about the fact that women didn't become teachers? Was he so, the part of him that was a human, so embroiled in the
mm.
culture that you didn't even think about it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question to ask, right? Yeah, how much it was a choice because of a cultural time and yeah, social
Time. Yeah.
time. Yeah, exactly. Or if it was, oh, yeah,
Did they
that would
know?
be very interesting to know.
Were they kind of just playing the game that would get things to where it needed to go?
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
Mm,
I find that fascinating. Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, that would be wonderful. That's a beautiful question to ask. Yeah, yeah. Right. So we're slowly arriving to the end of the episode today. Amanda, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, I don't know. I think you've covered a huge range.
It's true.
Oh, there is. Just, I think I would use this to acknowledge. I mean, obviously, I'm interested in the women in Reiki because that's what we
Mm.
did in the book, and um, I think I would want to acknowledge the male teachers out there who fully supported Zilka and I in promoting
Ah,
women in Reiki and were of the same understanding that it was important.
yeah.
Mikao Yamaguchi, Frank Arjava Petter,
Mm.
Justin Stein, the researcher, helped
Mm.
us a lot. Um, and so in terms of the book, they helped us with the book a lot. There's I don't do you know Rene Wogtley? I can't say.
Yeah, Berkeley, I think. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
He was just very supportive and very enthusiastic, and
Mm.
always is. I think he's just a lovely guy. Um,
Mm.
and so, they were very supportive of this, and that's very refreshing to see.
Yeah,
Women want to see more of, humanity come forward rather than
right.
just, really it's just the men, So it was lovely, and I acknowledge them
Mm.
for that. Yeah.
More as a human experience more than a.
That's what we need. It's not that women need to become more powerful than men or anything like it. We just need to start seeing us all as human beings, and therefore we all have the same value, the same different kinds of value, right?
Mm.
Different pieces of the puzzle that we have to gift the world. But we should all be encouraged, no matter what the packaging on the outside is like. Wish we
Exactly.
I hope one day we come to a place where we can ignore that and see the spiritual beings we are.
Mm. I hope so too, of course. That would be a wonderful place. And I guess by doing what you do as well, it's a way to open that, to create that space, that human, connection.
So, right? Yeah, I hope
Mm.
so. I think we're all slowly moving that way. Yeah.
Right.
Some people
Beautiful.
faster than others, of course. I think there's a lot of people, again, we come back to the world as looking a certain way, but I think underneath it's not. There's a lot of movement and growth. in the grassroots side of things. Yeah. So I'm
Mm.
hopeful, very hopeful.
Yes, yes. Beautiful. So yeah, we're coming to the end of the episode now. Like I said that probably 3 times, but I would love to talk to you more and more. That's why. But yeah, I just want to take a moment to thank you for sharing your wonderful experiences with us. And yeah, it was truly inspiring, and I really enjoyed our conversation. I really hope we can do this again sometime.
I would love to. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful questions, for what you're doing here with this podcast. And it is lovely to see you again. I know you mentioned at the beginning we first met in Japan a couple of years ago.
Mm.
Um, and it was wonderful to meet you then. And it's been wonderful to chat with you now. You have a very bright light, and it's just beautiful to meet with again. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, you also have this, you're part of the people I meet on my path, and I'm like, oh, this person is Reiki too, like these teachers or masters or people that really you can truly see that they're emanating Reiki, they're living Reiki, and you're part of these people. And yeah, it's such a wonderful experience to just like talk to you or just be around you. So thank you for that.
The feeling's mutual. So thank you.
Thank you. And so before we say goodbye, if people want to reach out to you or find you, what's the best way to do that? Like you have a website, right?
I do. I have a website, www.learnjikidenreiki.com. But we also have Women in Reiki, which is the address is just obviously www.womeninreiki.com. So you can
Perfect.
go through those.
Great, great. So I'll make sure to include all the details and links in the episode notes, right? So, Amanda, thank you so much again. It's been such a pleasure, and ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました. Thank you so much. Thank you.
ありがとう。Thank you for listening. And once again, a big thank you to Amanda. It's a joy to share these moments with you. And if you'd like to continue exploring these topics, you can find me on Instagram or on my website. And if you want to dive deeper or learn more, all the links are in the episode notes. I'll see you soon for a new episode, and in the meantime, take care. ありがとうございました。